time for the hit of the show. One of Hollywood's great pictures. Which reminds me, believe me, you'll make a hit when you pass out Philip Morris cigarettes among your friends.
You know, with all we know about nutrition, about the health risks of processed foods, about the questionable effects of beauty products, it's kind of funny that the only thing to ever be outright banned from advertising on television is cigarettes. But even then, that took a long time to happen. Then again, when you factor in the reality that this country loves money more than its citizens, it makes sense why they'd allow advertisers to promote stuff to us that might harm us. That being said, there was a period of time where cigarettes were marketed on television with alarming regularity, and people even smoked on live TV. But one man, one rugged, all-American, rough-and-tumble symbol that oozed masculinity, really was the face of cigarette advertising on TV for almost 50 years. And that man was not just one man, but more the concept of men, and made up of many men. I'm speaking, of course, about the Marlboro Man. Smoke 'em if you got 'em, boys.
There is truth in advertising, yes I swear. Got new Nikes on my feet and Vidal Sassoon in my hair. I can sure use a Budweiser Fruit of the Loom underwear. There is truth in advertising, I swear. Why would they lie to me when they love what they sell? Plus we all know that the liars have a special fire in hell. On the television, radio, and in the magazines, the advertising gods perpetuate the American dream. Advertising, let it be, let it be. Now I know that I don't need to buy everything they try to sell me, but so easily divided is a fool and his money. There is truth in advertising, let it be. Why would they lie to me when they love what they sell? Plus we all know that the liars got a special fire in hell. On the television, radio, and in the magazines, the advertising gods perpetuate their
Before we get into anything, you need to know something, and that is that, at one point, cigarettes were considered by doctors to be healthy. How much of this was paid propaganda by lobbyists of the industry? Hard to say. But I think it's more believable that people were just wildly misinformed about, everything back then. But for all its posturing, all its insistence on its rugged masculinity, the one key thing that nobody seems to know is that these cigarettes were for women. In 1924, smoking was assigned as an emblem of first-wave feminism, and yet their advertisements, even with the feminist attachment, were wildly stereotyped to the point of tropism. Steeped in gender stereotypes, they featured housewives who, yes, wanted to smoke, but also wanted to keep their lipstick intact while doing so. Marlboro, marketed as mild as May, kept to this for quite some time actually. And while men smoked the brand as well in the 1940s, the brand was failing in comparison to the American Tobacco Company's Lucky Strike cigarettes. By 1954, the women's cigarettes still represented less than 1% of the domestic cigarette market. And then, something happened. Something very, very important. In the 1950s, 4 independent studies found that a high percentage of lung cancer patients were also heavy smokers, with dozens of similar studies backing up these results in the years to follow, definitively tying the thing the industry had touted as a flashy accessory to something that would kill you. In 1954, scientists at the American Cancer Society stated that men with a history of regular cigarette smoking have considerably higher death rate than men who have never smoked or men who have smoked only cigars or pipes, So, Marlboro, wanting to reassure their male customers these things weren't in fact a hazard to their health, launched a filtered brand the same year, said to reduce the amount of tar and other toxic chemicals that a smoker inhaled. Unfortunately, these filtered cigarettes were seen as weaker, less flavorful. They needed a plan, something to show that the notion of filtered cigarettes only being for women and sissy men wasn't true, and that macho, rugged men could also smoke them. But the funniest part is that the guy we got wasn't even the first guy they tried. Marlboro approached this ad campaign with a slew of masculine tropes, including sailors, football players, and even airline pilots. On top of that, many of the ads prominently displayed the men's military tattoos, as if to further insinuate the belief that this is what real masculine men smoke: filtered cigarettes. Men who have seen war smoke filtered cigarettes. There is nothing shameful about it. Then they finally hit on the cowboy. And the thing is, it makes sense. He symbolized individualism to many Americans in the 1960s, a time in which individualism was a highly sought-after trait thanks to the hippie movement. But why a cowboy? That's the real question. Why did the sailor, the football player, the airline pilot? Okay, let's be real. We all know the airline pilot wasn't going to work, right? Why did they not have the same impact? Why did the cowboy make such an impression? I think to truly understand this ad campaign, one needs to also understand America's love for the West and what that time period meant to us as a nation. Between the pioneering spirit, where the frontier fostered a sense of individualism and self-reliance, that attitude itself became central to Americans. The vast landscape itself became a symbol of American majesty and source of national pride. And, perhaps most importantly for our topic, figures like cowboys became legendary, embodying a romanticized ideal of bravery that is still present and felt to this very day. There was a period of time where, and this may be hard to believe, Westerns were the #1 television genre for almost 30 years, if not longer. TV shows like Gunsmoke, which had transitioned over from radio, became iconic staples over the airwaves, and people like Roy Rogers were getting children interested in the concept of the West, even long after the West had stopped really existing in actuality. Because the thing is, the West as we know it was fairly fictionalized, created by Hollywood. Which is perhaps why it makes sense this mascot would be so easily accessible to the average consumer. So now, let's meet the men behind the man. This is Robert Norris. Norris was one of the first models for the campaign. A real-life rancher and a Coloradan, Norris was a non-smoker who later left the role due to concerns about the health effects of smoking. It didn't hurt that he was friends with John Wayne, yes, the cowboy legend, which helped him snag the role in the first place. But despite Norris's claim to fame as one of the first, he doesn't hold the acclaim of Darrell Winfield, a real-life rancher from Wyoming who featured in the campaign from '68 to '89, and is considered by some to have been the most iconic Marlboro Man. The character was created by our good friends at the Leo Burnett Company, but there were so many men who portrayed the character, and the character had a profound impact. Following the launch of the campaign in '55, sales saw a significant jump from $5 billion to $20 billion in just 2 years. The character had done what they needed. He had taken them to the top in just 24 months. And yet, despite the fame, despite the iconography attached to the character, despite the acclaim he garnered not just as a mascot but also for the company, there was just one little itty-bitty problem he couldn't overcome. Remember that whole American Cancer Society stated that men with a history of regular cigarette smoking have considerably higher death rates than the men who have never smoked thing? Yeah. There's no amount of financial success that can overcome death. Because for as famous as people like Norris or Winfield made the character, and Norris even leaving over concerns of smoking being hazardous to his health, it actually wouldn't be either of these men to be killed by it. That crown belongs to Wayne McLaren, the first man who appeared as the character to then die of a smoking-related illness.
This is the flavor that won the West. Just shows what flavor can do. That Marlboro flavor won the West and the rest of the country too. From Manhattan Towers to the towering pines, clear across this great wide land, the one they favor when they smoke for flavor is the one with the Marlboro brand. Come to where the flavor is. Come to Marlboro country.
McLaren, who developed lung cancer, would go on to rally against smoking after the diagnosis. The LA Times quoted his mother in saying that among his last words was the phrase, "Tobacco will kill you. I am living proof." And while he was the first, he wouldn't be the last. In fact, 4 other men would follow similar fates, the second of which was David McLean, who died of lung cancer in 1995. His widow sued the Philip Morris Company a year later. And, frankly, his death comes as no surprise when you hear how much smoking he had to do. In her lawsuit, she stated that during the taping of the Marlboro Man ads, he was obligated to smoke the cigarettes. This makes sense. Use the product to promote the product. What doesn't make sense is that because these advertisements were so carefully orchestrated, he was required to smoke up to 5 packs per take in order to simply get the ashes to fall a certain way, the smoke to rise a certain way, and to hold the cigarette in a certain way. I'd like to repeat a part of that because it seems vaguely important. He was required to smoke up to 5 packs per take. Not per day, per take. That is a level of corporate irresponsibility if I've ever seen it. And in a perhaps delicious twist of irony, not only did 5 Marlboro men suffer from tobacco-related cancers, but so did the man who embodied the Old West himself, John Wayne. It doesn't get any more circular than that. Burnett's advertising firm still exists, obviously, but Burnett, a longtime smoker himself, died in 1971. And the kicker of it all? Good old Robert Norris, who walked away and never smoked, outlived them all, dying in 2019 at the ripe old age of 90. After multiple states sued the major tobacco company, the Marlboro Man campaign finally ended in 1999, never to be used again. Near as I can figure, it was more financially taxing to spend time in court than it was financially sensible to continue the campaign, hence why the character was retired. Let's have a quick aside, shall we? Remember how I said earlier that Westerns were, the most popular TV genre for about 30 years? The Marlboro Man campaign lasted a little over 40 years. This may be a reach, but is it completely unrealistic to say that, aside from simple changing tastes in entertainment and genres, as well as an oversaturation of the genre leading to viewer burnout and declining ratings, the perception of cowboys dying of cancer directly hurt the image of cowboys in the American psyche, and thus hurt the genre as well? The campaign was on TV, after all. Just some food for thought. Cigarette advertising was banned from television on January 2nd, 1971. This meant that, for half his lifespan, the Marlboro Man was confined solely to print ads as a mascot. But the thing I want you to take away from this is, what happened wasn't the Marlboro Man's fault. The Marlboro Man doesn't exist. He's a character created to promote something very bad, but a character nonetheless. The irony isn't lost on me. The cowboy symbolized freedom, bravery, and especially justice, helping others, protecting them, being the law when the land was lawless. So, for one of the most famous examples of a cowboy to ever exist, becomes the face of a multi-million-dollar company that's killing its own user base. It's the inverse. Here's a cowboy who, instead of protecting people, led them to the slaughter. The cowboy became the killer, and frankly, the imagery of the cowboy is likely forever tainted as a result. While others were buried in shallow graves thanks to the consumption of the product he helped endorse, the Marlboro Man rode off into the sunset, never to be seen again, leaving a trail of bodies in his wake. Perhaps the only mascot whose consumer is more dead than they are. Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker.
Listen while I tell you a story, the tale of the Marlboro brand. It came out of Richmond, Virginia one day and spread clear across the land. From Manhattan towers to towering pines, the lakes to the Rio Grande. When folks smoke for flavor, the one that they favor is the one with the Marlboro brand.